Hi, my name is Tobias and I'm 27 years old, and I found Islam approximately 3 or 4 years ago. I am a skilled carpenter. I had this idea that if I started to build churches, then I would be able to start a good reputation for myself. And then I started in a company where we were in the process of renovating Roskilde Cathedral. I got interested in this project and thought if I could get in, then I could create a really good reputation. And after a few years, I came into a company where on the first day all employees at the company were called, and we were asked to meet. We were told about how well it went with the company and about the sites we worked on and about how well it went at the various projects. And then the carpenter master told all of us that now we should start building Denmark's first mosque. I had the feeling that whether it was a church or a mosque, this is something that I wanted. It made no difference to me, so I went to the carpenter master and told him that I wanted to participate in the construction of the mosque. He called me a half year later and told me that the construction of the mosque was about to begin and asked me if I was still interested. For sure I was. I went off to the mosque and continued going for 2-3 months where I worked at the mosque and accidentally stumbled upon an old acquaintance whom I had not talked to in 5 years or more. I met her on my way home from work. We stood and talked for a while. She is a Muslim and was born a Muslim, and she wears a headscarf. But for me at that time, I did not know anything about it. For me, it was completely random to encounter her there. We stood and talked for a while, on various issues. I told her that I was in the process of building a mosque, because at that time I thought it was very interesting as she was a Muslim. So she was very excited and started to explain a little about Islam, and she asked me if I had any interest in Islam. However, at that time I did not really have interest or knowledge about Islam, other than what you get to know by the media. She explained a little, and I basically thought that because I worked at a mosque, I got the feeling that it could be fun to understand what I was in the process of building. So she presented to me something called UMG, the Muslim Youth Group, which I took and said, "Thank you, I'd like to see what it was." About a week after we met, we went to the UMG, and it was divided between brothers and sisters. It was quite exciting to come down here because she went to the sisters and I went to the brothers' side. I came there as a Dane, and I had to pull back the curtain. They were all foreigners, and they looked at me, and I looked over at them and thought, well, here I am. But right from the beginning, they were very sweet and nice people. They came over to me and greeted me and asked what I'm doing here and why I'm here and this and that. I then explained to them the story. They were really happy about the fact that I was in the process of building a mosque. At that point, I did not know what it meant yet, other than it was a job I had to do. They explained, and we sat and talked, and it came down to an evening of debates, where they sat and talked about what Islam was and different things. And after the debate that they came back to me and we sat and talked, and they asked about me, about my life, about who I am and things like that. The more I talked to them, the more I found out that I had much in common with these people. And I feel that the way I was raised and the way I grew up, that we shared many views and opinions about how to be as a human and things like that. And then I found out that they had the same ways of behaving which I have always had. Personally, I have always been a type that knew a lot of people, and I have all round. I was born and raised in Hevidover and moved around a lot and encountered many people. But I never really, but I never really felt that I wanted to be part of a group or that I could not talk to someone because he was such or with her because she did such. I have always been myself, but also because I think that the way I was raised in this matter, I have not had the need to be part of something or be better than others or to live up to what other people thought and believed. So I've always been all around from one group to another, and I've been a bit with them over here, and I've been a bit with them over here, and a bit with them over there. Then when I came to UMG and met the foreigners and the Muslims down there, it occurred to me that there were so many of them that were like me in this way, and they had the perception of things that we are here because we need to be ourselves and we must learn to stand on our own feet and not compete about how has the coolest cell phone or the coolest shirt. So it seems very natural for me to get into their company, where we share the same opinions and perspectives. And I have just been in there for the last year and a half. And the more I've talked with these people and also started to meet them in private, it just occurred to me and to many of them as well who said that to me, that the way I was raised and brought up is much like the Islamic way of behaving. So it has never been a leap that I have taken from being a Dane to being a Muslim or an atheist to a Muslim. So it has been very natural for me from the time that I had entered. So it has been very natural for me from the time that I had entered UMG to the time that I'm today. I don't feel like I have changed. There are many who have asked me questions and told me, well, Tobias, are there not many limitations? There are many things you can do. Has it not changed your life? Generally, I explained to them that before I was a Muslim, I did not kill people and I did not steal from people, and this is what Islam enforces. All these things are not part of Islam. So when we hear in the media that there are some who have killed in the name of Allah, it will be equal to me taking my body Sebastian and saying, now I want to kill in his Allah's name. It will be equal to me taking my body Sebastian and saying, now I want to kill in his Allah's name. I've never talked to Sebastian about this, so he will probably be very upset if I started saying this. And it is the same with Allah. Allah has never asked us to kill in His name, so there is a very distorted perception of what Islam is, and there are many who abuse Islam and Allah's name. So there is a very distorted perception of what Islam is, and there are many who abuse Islam and Allah's name. Just as when you look at a football stadium where suddenly there are 2,000 people running in the stadium to smash everything. When I ask football fans whether they regard these people who run onto the pitch as football fans, they say no, they are crazy and they are violent psychopaths and terrorists. And that's where I like to flip it over and say it's the same for us when people blow themselves up in the car or drive into a bus. It has nothing to do with Islam. Again, it's just terrorists. There are many who have managed to distort the image of Islam because they use an excuse, whether it's a football club or a religion, and they say, well, then that's just how it is. The more this case is brought up, the more it becomes real for the people who do not dare set themselves into meeting the people that are involved. I bet that if you come into a football club and you talk to them about what their unity is, then it's my understanding that they are drinking beer and eating hot dogs on a stadium. I bet that if you came into a football club and you talked to them about what their unity is, then it's my understanding that they are drinking beer and eating hot dogs on a stadium. Wherein they on TV can show in a stream of Broadway Stadium where there are people running in and smashing things. We see this over the course of 2 months. So this can technically become my view of football fans, even if I don't go and talk to them. And I feel that the same thing has happened with Islam. When people see what happens on TV and see some people with dark hair and brown eyes behave absolutely unacceptable, they just automatically assume that it's part of Islam to behave in such a manner. As much as I would think that there has been the ongoing debate here in Denmark about how preschools will not serve pork anymore. But I've never read or heard anywhere that it has something to do with Muslims that preschools will not serve pork. Because the word pork is mentioned, then many people associate this immediately to the Muslims, as if this is our fault that pork will not be served, but no one has ever mentioned it. It's just because they've heard several times that Muslims do not eat pork, so they derived a conclusion from it that it's probably them and their fault that children cannot eat pork in preschool. I have always felt in my entire life that there have been so many coincidences when I learned about Islam. I could see in the rear view mirror that there has been a red thread throughout my entire life. There have not been things that has happened in my life as coincidence until this day. I can pretty much put a word on all the things that has happened in my life, and I still choose to call it coincidence until this day. But that's just the word I use so others can understand it too. But in my life, there has been I believe in fate. I believe that we experience a few things in our lives that make us ponder. I think that we have two choices. And it may be a coincidence that the girl I told you about, whom I met in Norebro on my way home from work, it might well have been a coincidence. But for me, this is quite a vivid red thread through my life, telling me that since I got the chance and said yes to get into UMG to see what it was, well, I felt that I grabbed the chance that was created for me. So Allah gave me it, and I hold on. I feel I am on the right path. And therefore, when I catch the right chances, let me explain. If there is a knife on the table, then I can use it to eat and I can use it to kill. If there is a knife on the table, then I can use it to eat and I can use it to kill. Allah has given me the free will and I can do what I want with it. But as long as I, in the eyes of Allah, take the right decisions, then He will continue to grant me what we usually call coincidences. Then He will continue to create the good things in my life that makes me experience the right things. And we've all had it, though in one way or another. But for me, it has been a learning process. I grew up with alcohol and talking to girls and other things like that, which was all quite normal. And I feel that Allah has given me those opportunities so that I today don't feel the need to do this and that because I've already tried it. I know what good things it offers and I know what bad things it gives. Last year, I started to work at Roskilde Festival with a buddy, where we helped set the stage. And this year, we got the offer again if we would like to participate. So we took 4 friends and we went again this year to help set up the stage. So we went for a walk through all the camps there back and forth. We did it for 2 hours, where we basically just went and observed all the people there. Movie, I don't know, a science fiction movie or a refugee camp. with people who are tied and put into small tents, total chaos. We walked and talked for a while about what it really means to be drunk, and I came to the conclusion that it is an escape from reality if people choose to drink. So we came to work at 4 a.m., but there was not much to do anyway, so we had kept ourselves awake all night for no good reason. But it turned around from night to day, and we had finished the work, and we walked out and observed how people were when they were completely drunk and everything was in chaos. I got such weird feelings and thoughts. I could see how people sat and urinated everywhere. People had no resistance, and people had no control over themselves, and they did as they pleased. And people had no control over themselves, and they did as they pleased. I started to think, so you can call it coincidence whether we were going to work that evening, but for me it really put some thought into my head, and it caused me and my bodies not to drink for the last 4 or 5 days at Roskilde Festival. It turned around from day to night, which also probably has little to do with it. But now that I've got faith, I have also clearly experienced that Allah helps us when He knows our intentions. He helps us on our way, so He has definitely helped me in those situations. A little while after I got home from Roskilde Festival, the month of Ramadan started. I got the feeling that if I could keep myself, I had a really good time at the festival, and we stayed awake right up until late at night without being drunk or take part in these events. Well, then I thought that when I was 14 years old, I could enjoy myself with my friends without drinking. Therefore, I thought that I could also enjoy myself this day as a 27 years old. I had, after all, experienced it at Roskilde Festival. So I decided that since the month of Ramadan has started, that now I would try 100% to live according to Islamic rules that tells us that we should not drink, we should not eat pork, and all such things. So I decided that since the month of Ramadan had started, that now I would try 100% to live according to Islamic rules that tells us that we should not drink, we should not eat pork, and all such things. So for me, it started when I put it all that was behind me on the shelf and was done with it. And I haven't had the need for it for the last 2.5 months now. And I have not had the need for it for the last 2.5 months now. I also have experienced that, at least for me, it's just a temptation anyway. And many of my friends have asked me, well, it is not difficult because you grew up with eating pork and you've also been drinking throughout your life. And I explained it like that. Just because you see a girl on the street does not mean that you necessarily have to have intercourse with her. There's also certain intentions in your head that tells you that you exceed certain limits and that you need to keep yourself inside certain moral requirements you have. It's exactly the same thing for me. It's not something I need, it's something I've tried, and I know what kind of fun experiences and bad experiences it has brought me. So I'm not tempted by these situations anymore. It's for me a closed chapter. For me, I pray my 5 prayers 3 times a day. I started doing so in the month of Ramadan. Again, it came to me quite natural. It gave me the strength when I was at work for 12 hours a day and when I came home and had to work in the kitchen. But I'm quite sure that showing Allah that I want this, He has helped me endure all this stuff without feeling completely exhausted and quite tired. For me, it's not any different than when people... A few years ago, I played basketball for 10 years, and we practiced 4 times, sometimes 5 times a week, and played matches over the weekend. I had this discipline which told me that if I wanted to achieve something or if I wanted to be at the same level as others, then that is what's required. That is not something anybody sees as a strange thing if people play football or whatever sport they take part in. People can easily relate when others get up in the morning and practice for 3 hours, go to school, come back and practice for three go to school, come back and practice for 3 hours and eat dinner and practice, come back and practice for 3 hours and eat dinner and practice for another 3 hours. And for me to be a Muslim now, I see it the same way. I get up and when I get home from work, I pray 2 of my prayers. I do the things I want to do, then I pray 2 of my evening prayers. I get up again at night and pray my night prayer. I think in every possible way that this is just a discipline you have inside yourself. I believe that as soon as you feel that you are in contact with Allah, you dare ask for more things. As an atheist, I did not ask for things because I did not think there was any more greater than us. And I said I asked for something 3 times and got the feeling that now I also have to say thank you. And got the feeling that now I also have to say thank you because quite often we ask for something, then we don't think about what we asked for. After a while, when we are doing well again, we forget what we asked for and we continue to live happily with a mission. But now as a Muslim, I know what I'm asking for and I'm not afraid to ask for Allah's help anymore. So when I'm done with my prayer and I ask Allah for help, I can feel, and I have experienced several times that it can take 14 days or 24 hours before you get help as long as you just keep your eyes and ears open. I have seen when I ask for one thing and the next day a quite random person comes over to me and explains something about what I have asked the day before. It's some pretty wide experiences that I had never believed in the first 25. It's some pretty wide experiences that I had never believed in the first 25, 26 years of my life. So we should just learn to accept that there is something greater than us. But once you've done it, it's a fantastic experience to be able to feel the power and strength behind asking questions. That for most people would be out in the air. But eventually there comes an answer, and it could be in every possible way that these answers come. But you just have to accept and be open about the things that come around you. Then you will see that you get answers to the questions you are asking. There are many who asked me if I'm happier now that I'm a Muslim than when I was an atheist. And yes, I do feel that because you find out that everything you do on this earth has a meaning in one way or another. Even before I learned about Muslims and before I studied Islam, I've always had the idea that you could only get minus points in the account. It didn't matter regardless of what would happen. You would die with minus points, not matter what, by eating pork, by saying something bad, or by behaving in a certain way, or going with the wrong people. So when you start to find all the positive things in Islam, you will find out how many plus points you can get. I was very negative about the whole plus-minus scoring system as being put into being a Muslim and how it should be perceived. And I think many, or at least the atheists, who don't know Muslims or take interest in Islam regard this as a black-white scale scoring system where you get points all the time. But I found out very quickly that it's incredibly easy to just to basically behave like a decent person and talk nicely to others. Offers as well as many plus points you think you will scrape together by negative points in your account. And I've asked Allah for advice to show me whether it should be Shia or Sunni, because I feel that Allah gave me Shia Islam from the beginning. And at one point I asked the question if this was more right than the other and what was right for me. I've got the feeling that I've studied Islam in 2 years and I've been a Muslim for the last 4 months. For me, it's been more important to find out what Islam is. Also, I have a lot of good brothers around me who help me understand how Shia and how Sunni are in relation to each other. The thing that has made me happiest and made it easiest for me is that no matter who I talk to, they always say to me, "You shouldn't think about what we say and how we behave. If what we say sounds interesting, then you should go home and study it so you can find out what you feel is for the best." My message from a Muslim to a non-Muslim would be that we shouldn't be afraid of what we don't know about. I feel that I have stood with a foot in both camps and have discovered that when there is something you are ignorant about, well, you are often too scared to find the knowledge behind it. So I think that we should be more open and learn about Muslims instead of believing prejudice and stereotypes that many have been created in the media and elsewhere. If you find any prejudices, then I think that you should go and talk to the Muslims you find on the streets. And you should be aware of the fact that just because someone with dark hair and brown eyes walks by, it does not mean that he or she is a Muslim. Because being a Muslim implies that you talk nicely to each other and you behave well with your fellow men. In Islam, we have brothers and sisters in Islam. And we have brothers and sisters in humanity. So for us, we behave decently towards all people who come over to us.